Welcome, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. It is June the 14th, year 2023. Welcome to Facebook Live Q&A. Let me get started on the panel. Today we have April, who is a psychic and a medium and quite a few modalities of healing under her belt. Good evening, April, and everybody's quite familiar with April. And then we have Rob here, who is a author of a book called Stop Thinking. And I don't remember the rest of it, Rob, so thank you for joining us. And then we have Patricia, who's part of our core group of meditators. I don't see Kelly and Kelly here, but remember Patricia last time, April, she was talking about like the shadow, is it personal or not? And we were talking about the ego and shadow. Did you want to talk about that, Patricia? You still have that question?
I mean, it would be nice to know what everybody thinks. What's the relation almost? Is ego hiding in the shadow, or is shadow necessary? But also, if we can tie it to what your tip of the day was, because it was so incredible. And I just froze when you were talking about wounded child, a wounded healer. And I think that's, I don't know if the shadow, if the wound, is because of the shadow, if it's the shadow that has made us the wound, and you were talking about that whoever hurt us must have suffered so much more. So we need, it was so beautiful. So thank you. And so maybe ego, shadow, wounded child, wounded healer. It's like almost a journey.
Let me give a recap for everyone what that wounded child is. Remember last Facebook Live, and quite a few times Ken has mentioned this, right? This word called inner child. And I have no vocabulary for inner child because I've not been through therapy. Excuse me. I've never been through a therapist or any kind of the therapy language in my vocabulary. My vocabulary is all Eckhart Tolle and some of Dr. Joe Dispenza, right? So when, so last time too, Kelly mentioned that something happened and the inner child, when I was describing about my mom hitting me, she said, I want to hug that inner child of Poonam's, right? Kelly said that. So I was like, who is this inner child? Like, to me, it always is that. And then I watched this video of Carolyn Mace, and Carolyn Mace said this exact same thing when she hears therapists talk about wounded child, that she's like, what wounded child? She said, no, the wounded child, the child needs a wound, because without the wound, you won't have the archetype of a wounded healer. So you're living the archetype, you're actually living out, which all of us are. If we are on a spiritual path, we are a wounded healer. We're living out that the nobility of being a wounded healer, right? So she says, there has to be a wound. Somebody has to inflict the wound. And we have to thank the person that is inflicting the wound, because that is a much more difficult task. It is easier to be inflicted upon than the person that is inflicting the wound, right? Because they have to be that unconscious, right? They have to practice that role of being unconscious and inflict the wound on us. So she said, I mean, I don't remember her exact verbiage, but I'm paraphrasing here. She said, we have to thank them that they did the bigger task of actually inflicting the wound, but the wounded child needed the wounded healer. And with that, I'll go to April and I'll tag everyone while April is speaking. If you want to talk about both of these, the shadow, ego, and the wounded child, April, thank you.
So they're all intertwined together. They're all kind of different aspects of our journey and of our the wounds, the hurts, that we experience. The ego is, so the ego is the one that kind of identifies with you more, identifies with your identity, your self identity more. Like, I am a counselor, I am a mom, I am an executive, it's more tied to your identity. They're all interlinked and they all tie to your identity. That's why it's kind of hard to talk about it. It's kind of hard to separate it. I kind of laugh because to me, the ego is the one that is like obnoxious and in your face and like, hey, I'm here, right? And the shadow is what hides. So the shadow is the part of you that it's the parts that you don't want other people to know, that you don't really want to work through. And it's a lot of it too is a part of being like, well, see, this is where they intersect. Because the ego is also part of trying to be accepted, but the shadow are the parts that maybe you hide to be accepted. The shadow can be sneaky. The ego is kind of more out front. But ironically, I've met so many people that they have no clue of the ego. They have no clue that they are identified with these roles and these identities. They really have no clue until you point them out and you say, well, that's ego. And they're like, what's that? So I agree with Eckhart and his ego part. The ego is an entity that starts around age 2. And this is where we get the terrible twos. And his description of it is correct, where pretty much up until that point, if you look into like psychology, the child literally does think they are an extension of the parent. Like they are part of the parent. And then around that age, they start to figure out that they are their own person. They're their own entity and they can say no. They can say, I don't want to, and I want the blue cup and I have to have the blue cup and I can't drink out of anything but the blue cup. And but to me, the shadow is more of those parts that maybe we don't like about ourselves, that we and then and then we try to hide those, not only from everybody else, but from ourselves. So that's where like the shadow work comes up, where these parts of you, these behaviors, these responses will just sneak up to you and you have to go, why did I do that? And it'll seem like it is part of the ego. So I do think that maybe perhaps it's a part of the ego. They're so similar, but they're not. And that's why we said they're yours, because it's your things that you're hiding. It's your things you don't want other people to know. So it's partly ego, like, why do you overcompensate? Because I don't feel good about myself because my identity is low. But then why do you don't want people to know that you avoid parties or you avoid going to places because you don't believe or love in yourself? Now that's the shadow part. The wounded child is, it plays a role in the ego, it plays a role in the shadow, and it is very much what Eckhart calls the pain body. It's very, very much what he calls the pain body. And I really do like that description because I think people get that. They get it quickly, they resonate with it, they can understand it. And when he said that, when I listened, years and years ago, and The Power of Now, and it was like a light bulb. It was like, oh, that's what that is. Yes, it is a pain body. It's a whole body of pain, has different parts and components to it. The inner child is the child that's wounded, that couldn't process what was happening. So children, and I've actually had a child who's done this. Children turn the world in on themselves. And I always kind of thought that was weird that in psychology, there's a thing where they say that, the children will kind of think everything is about them, revolve around them. You'll hear the statement, the sun or the moon is following them. I have legitly had a child say that to me. And I always thought that was weird, but it's very true. So everything that's happening in the child's world, the only rationale with the child's mind that the child can come up with is, it must be my fault. I must be bad. I must not be lovable. I must not be worthy. Because they're not capable of really grasping the bigger picture, the whole context. Oh, my mom has a sadness. That's why she behaves that way. It really has nothing to do with me. She has a sadness or she has an anger. They can't do that at that age. They can sense that it's not right, but they can't really separate themselves out of it. So that's how the inner child gets wrapped into this. And then people then will use their identity, their ego, to compensate in either way. So even the people pleaser could be this very outgoing, obnoxious person, but they could also be like the doormat. And they could be walked on with no boundaries. The shadow is the part that will hide that they don't have any boundary. It'll hide it. So that's how the three of them kind of interlink. Does that all make sense?
Incredible. Thank you so much, April. So my understanding of shadow is, so the ego is, now to clarify, ego is the way, now other people may have different, completely different description of what the ego is. What Eckhart says, and I'm going to explain Eckhart's explanation of the ego. He says it's building an identification, and idem means making something the same as me, right? The F-A-C-E-R-E, Fakir, is making something the mirror of me, building an identity that way. So when the child, he says in a New Earth, when a child has a stick and he says, this is my stick, right? It has made the stick its own. The child has made the stick his own. So when he loses the stick, he's like, where is my, just like April is saying, right? That when the child uses a mug, it may be something as simple as a stick. They'll go, where's my steak? I've lost my steak, kind of thing, right? They built an identity with that, right? So it may be a stick. The very easy things to think of about ego being an identity is, okay, I have a car. Like if somebody has a BMW, they're identified with their BMW. When they sit in it, they're like, oh, look at me sitting in this luxury car. Or somebody, you know, a lot of people here have this thing about wearing like a monogram handbags, shoes, right? If it is a Coach bag or a Louis Vuitton bag, everybody thinks that just because they're holding a bag that they're superior, right? And always, it almost is like the ego survives through comparison. Like, look at me, I'm wearing this Coach bag, that's why I'm superior. Or look at me, I'm wearing this $300 whatever, Donna Karan, or one of those designer clothes, right? So look at me, I'm wearing this $300 dress. Then you're building, your identity is built not through presence. You're not saying your presence is what is who you are, but some kind of mental construct about yourself. So yeah, that is the ego, that I have a mental image of who I am, and I've built an identity around that. And this can be multiple layers. Like I'm a mother is an identity. I'm a like Sri Lakshmi was just saying, right? She's a teacher. That's just an identity. That's so Eckhart clarifies it's a function that we are serving. She is not a teacher by, that is not her essence. She's not a teacher by essence. She's fulfilled a function called teacher, right? So it's something like that. So ego, what you were asking was, it's personal or is it collective too, right? He said somewhere that the ego is not personal. Don't take it because it's not personal. He said that because all these patterns exist collectively in humanity. It almost is like the Akashic record has each and every pattern, right, April? Like each and every pattern, each and every emotion, all those records are written in the Akashic record. So we are just pulling, like, almost like you have to think of yourself, like Dr. Joe says, right? Living matrix, you're just connected, like the Borg. I don't know if you watch Star Trek. Do you watch Star Trek, Patricia? You know how the Borg connect with this thing? Like you're almost connected to that matrix, and then we are downloading stuff, right, April?
Yeah, so there is like the Akashic records for us. Those are inside of us, actually. They're in our cells. It's in our soul. And then there is the Akashic records for the planet, for the cosmos, our solar system. So, and who we are as humans, and what does that mean? I think the best way to describe that connection is, I know you guys, well, you remember, like when Princess Diana died, there was this weird feeling that spread all across. It didn't matter where you were. 9/11 was the same way. It's just this weird, thing that was way over in England. I'm way over here in America, but you could sense that deep sorrow. So that's an energy that is an energy that radiates. So we can connect to the universal Akashic records, which holds everything that's happened on Earth since its beginning. And then also your Akashic records hold everything that's happened to you since you've been incarnating. But we're absolutely linked together. We are linked together. Energy is, always moving. You can't destroy it. So that's, again, why I think that we, are connected on this panel in one way or another, that we have some sort of connection. And maybe if we never did have a connection before, we have one now. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, April. And then the shadow would be like, I talk about my mom, like I can go back to my 3-year-old self and see how much resentment I had towards my mom's verbal and physical abuse, right? And I know that is what attracted my, the action from my mom was attracted because I needed to know about my resentment. Now, the shadow would be if I were to ignore that I have any resentment in me. That I go around, I'm one that never can be resentful ever in my life. I'm so sweet, I'm so precious, and I put on a facade of being sweet and precious. Right? I'm very sweet when I talk, I'm very sweet when I interact with people and all that. But there's resentment in me. So I'm not looking into that resentment. I'm not looking at the resentment of that 3-year-old girl or the 6-year-old girl or the 9-year-old girl, or, you just move fast forward until your present moment. You're not looking at all the dark sides of what we had, that I had the same anger as I'm not looking. If I were to not look at the anger that was in my mother, it was in me as well. The pain body was in me as well. if I were to not look at it because of Eckhart's teachings, right? Not be able to, that would end up becoming my shadow. I would suddenly, like, I'd be very sweet to, the greatest example is how many times have you seen in the news, people saying, oh, that person shot this other person, but he was such a good neighbor. I cannot believe he shot the other person, right? Now, what happened to that person? Who shot the person? His shadow shot the person. Because suddenly the shadow comes out, right? He's been denying himself something. He's been sweet all these years. He's been gardening, and that's what they showed in the shadow effect, right? Like the guy who dusts off the Buddha statue, he cleans the front porch, but the moment he opens the door to his apartment, he's like almost a hoarder, and there's like dirty dishes all over his kitchen, food eaten like for weeks, not cleaned at all. But if you look at his front yard, it's like spick and span, right? Beautiful. Like, so the facade that we show, an aspect of the ego is showing a facade, but internally there's a shadow that we are not looking at, that I'm this dirty person, that I live in a very filthy manner, right? I'm not showing that. So that is the shadow. And it is very personal, because some people can be dirty, some people can be, the shadow can show, and that's why we have pedophilia. Like, so many people say, oh, how did he end up being a pedophile? Suddenly he's a school teacher or an instructor or a gymnastics instructor. How did he end up being, he's a doctor in gymnastics, like he's examining all the Olympic gymnasts. How did he become a pedophile, right? That's the shadow. And so it's personal. He can be a pedophile in his shadow. I can be somebody who's holding resentment in my shadow. So my shadow is going to be personal to me, and his shadow, I mean, we're going to live out our karmic, that's the karmic imprints. My imprints are going to be different from another person's imprint, but it is very universal. The patterns are very universal, right? Because pedophilia is not just one person. There's like hundreds of thousands of people who have pedophilia. Sex offenders, there's so many hundreds of thousands of people that are sex offenders, right?
So, Poonam, when he speaks, maybe I misunderstood, but he always says ego this, ego that. He doesn't say my ego, your ego. He says ego does this. So he kind of puts it that it's not personal. We just kind of taking it personally because we have to work on certain elements of it, but the ego itself is just out there, kind of trying to catch who I can catch next, because if I kill that person, I will always find another. It's like the ego, my ego doesn't die with me, so it's not mine, correct?
No, it is yours. He's just, Eckhart is very careful in his words. He makes sure not to like point blame, but it is your ego. There is a universal ego as well. There's an American ego. I'm an American. Well, what does that mean? But, right? Or Chinese are intelligent, Mexicans are hard workers. Like that's a cultural ego, a country ego. Like so it is individual, but he's just being generic. But no, it is your ego, because your ego is different from my ego. It manifests in different ways. There is a universal one, however. There is a culture one, there is a country one, but you have an individual one. So it's not something you catch, or it is,
Okay.
yeah, it's something that is developed per your environment, per your personality, your characteristics, your biology, your environment. Your ego is your ego,
So
and it manifests in different ways.
So it is developed because of the soul's contract. If I want to work on specific
Yeah.
thing,
Well,
I
yeah.
choose ego.
Yeah. No, you're not choosing it. It's a side effect of being human. The ego is an entity that thinks it's protecting you. It always thinks it's protecting you. It doesn't actually protect us, but it thinks it's protecting you. It's trying to make you feel okay, trying to make you feel important, feel safe. Even the people pleaser, even the doormat feels like they are okay. It's safer for them to be the doormat. That's ego protecting them. You need to just be quiet, be a good little girl, don't say anything. That's ego protecting you, wrapped into with the inner child. So yet you have your own individual ego. It is yours. It is based off of the experiences you had in your life, but it's also part of personality. Some children are born super shy. Some children are born like, I'm not a competitive person. I've never been one. Don't ever want to be one, but I have children super competitive. So it is partly your characteristic as well. I could care less ever if I ever win anything. Not important to me. But
And
I have,
we need
yeah.
to let go of every single form of ego.
Now
right?
the ego, yeah, the ego has its place because the ego does help you to create your identity. It also helps you to work through your issues. So it has its place, right? If you didn't have an ego that you learned you needed to work on, then what are you working on? So it has its place, it has its value, but yes, the more that we can step aside of it and realize that we are one, we're unconditional love, we're worthy, then we're in a much more peaceful, enlightened state.
Thank you.
I know Jonathan and Francesca have joined us online, so thank you. Grateful for the input. And Christina and Dave also joined us along with Sri Lakshmi, so thank you. Ron, did you want to say something about this topic? And I'll say something after you speak. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having me. Great topic. Shadow, ego, and a wounded child. I was taking notes. I didn't want to miss anything. I have my own concept of all of this stuff, and I was sharing this with my daughter. On Sundays, we do a kind of a private podcast between the two of us. And I have this, I've just internalized all these things. Eckhart Tolle, Deepak Chopra, goes way back, Alan Watts, all of these things, and I've interpreted it. And we were talking Sunday, and I kept putting everything in my language, and it was making me nervous. I was saying, I feel like I'm taking these people's information out of context. And she said to me something that was brilliant. She said, you know, everybody is internalizing and morphing what they learn into their own way. And so I'm going to share with you what I think of the shadow, ego, and wounded child. I did read Carl Jung's, a little bit of Carl Jung's stuff, not a whole bunch, on the shadow. And I think that's the direction that we're kind of talking about the shadow in. And it seems like the ego is kind of like the Eckhart Tolle kind of concept. To me, the shadow is, and I had to write notes as we were going through this. The shadow to me is a lie. It is a vibration that's hidden from me, that I hide from myself at a young age. I say, I can't see you if you can't see me, kind of thing, with this hidden vibration as a child. And then I'm so used to this as I grow up. And now there's this hidden, dark, scary, shadowy thing that's been lingering over me. And I don't even know what it is at this point. I'm 51, and my daughter's 21, and she's facing her shadow in her context of the word. And so it dawned on both of us that there is nothing behind the shadow unless you never look at it. So I wasn't looking at my shadow. I turned 50. Well, I wasn't looking at my shadow, and my life went upside down. And turns out that I had a lot of fear and void inside of me. And I was missing security and love and peace and all of these wonderful things that, you know, we all want someone else to give us, and someone else to teach us. And I was missing a lot of that. And finally, I shined the light of consciousness. These are my words. I just shined the light of consciousness on this really dark shadow area. And I said, you know what? I don't know what is so daggone scary about this piece of me, but I'm going to look at it. And I did this for months and months and months. And it turns out nothing's there. And so I told my daughter that, and she's got some shadows that she works on. And she said, wow, I did the same thing. And you're right. I looked in this corner. I didn't want to look in there. I saw the cobwebs, and then everything disappeared. The light of consciousness lights it up. Huge weight comes off the shoulders. And you go, what in the world was I so deathly afraid of? And it turns out, you know, like the old saying says, we're afraid of fear. Fear is what we're afraid of, not really anything behind it. The shadow is personal. I like what you were saying, or what April was saying about that. I do think the shadow is personal to each one of us in our ego earth suits. Yes, it's personal. But as the one consciousness, as our deeper divine self of who we truly are, the one that listens, the one that just takes in everything, the one that monitors the thoughts that goes back and forth, the one that notices that I can be afraid of a shadow and then be relieved of not having a shadow. That one's not so personal. That's the one consciousness that we're all connected through. I do think that if anything is personal, it is ego identified, because, and you know, this is a play on language or words, but personal means, hey, this is my name, this is my address, this is where I live, this is my no hair color, whatever you want to say. So that's what I feel about the shadow. The ego is the perception of myself, usually through the eyes of someone else. So I'm in the car lot and I'm saying, man, I would love to have that car, but I don't really realize that I want this image of myself behind the car so I could show the world how great I am. So sometimes we miss that. And then the wounded child, this is my favorite part. Because Hannah and I talk about the wounded child all the time. The wounded child is, we as adults can notice the pain within ourselves. So there's an entity noticing the pain. Who notices the pain? It's this higher self. It's the witnessing presence that notices the pain. The higher self notices that. And then we say, you have hurt me, that other person hurt me. So now there's a distinguishing difference between there's a me that got hurt and there's a you, and then there's this witnessing presence that is saying someone else hurt me. So I like to think of the wounded child as the other portion of me, the two yous. If we could be thinking about thinking, I just think of the wounded as the wounded child is the inner child. And so for instance, if my father is verbally abusive with me and giving me a hard time, and later in my adult life I say, man, he was really bothering me, that really hurt. What did I just do when I did that? I just hurt my inner child. I just wounded my inner child. I decided that because of the way my father was treating me, that at this moment, I'm going to bring on some thoughts and emotions that bring this negative energy through my body. So I like to think of this, this is the temple, and it's my job to stay at peace. And this is why forgiveness is so important, because if I don't forgive my father, then now I've just created this negative energy inside my temple. And I don't want to do that. I want to be so selfish that I say my inner child is way more important than what my father thought, what the world thinks of me, what anyone thinks of me, even what my thoughts think of me. So if I have some thoughts that come through and say, man, you really sucked on that Zoom meeting. You looked silly. You just made up your own stuff and you went along. I can say, so what? I'm going to stay nice and comfortable right here in this inner child. So I think the shadow, the ego, and the wounded child are all separate entities, and they are personal when we look at it from the earth suit, through the eye, from the ego and the identification here. But it's not personal from the higher self. Nothing can be personal to the higher self, to me. That's my take on all of that. Thank you for giving me a few minutes to talk.
You're amazing, Rob. Thank you so much for your input. Grateful for it. Yeah, what I got reminded of was Patricia would know in the movie The Shadow Effect what so Shadow Effect is a movie that Debbie Ford, who's like a pioneer in shadow work here in the US, she's passed away, she's late, Debbie Ford. So she created like a docu-series, because what April was talking about, right? In the docu-series, like towards the end, Deepak Chopra, she had Marianne Williamson and all of them join, and they talked about the collective shadow as well, right? Like we have wars, we have, that is showing our collective pain and collective shadow when we have these wars. So one scene that she has, and Patricia always remembers it, is this beach ball effect, that when we are young, we have these beach balls, like we have this one beach ball that is, I'm just making up, let's say we have some self-esteem issues, right? We are holding it down under the water. And then another beach ball is, we think we are not good looking, right? That we are ugly. And maybe another third beach ball that we have some resentment. So she shows in that movie that this person is holding all these beach balls under the water. She says, when you're young, then you can hold the beach balls under the water. But the moment your energy, like you get older and like life affects you, suddenly the beach ball comes up, you know, it reflects and hits you, right? So I feel that's how the pain body, the shadow work hits, you know, boom, from out of nowhere, something really negative happens to us because we are not looking at this portion of us that brought the challenge, and the challenge kind of awakens us up, right? Whatever the usually negative thing may be. It may be like a loss of a house, loss of relationship, loss of health. Those are what the shadow is bringing up. So that's why it is so important to actually look at all those negative parts of ourselves, like all around, right? Like go all around, like the pineal gland. Dr. Joe says, go around the room, right? 360 degrees, go look around that room. So go 360 degrees into your psyche and look at every nook and cranny and see where are all the negative portions. Caesar, you want to talk about this? Thank you.
Good evening. Yeah, I loved Rob's take and April's take, and there's been things. Hi, April, Kelly, Patricia, everybody. Missed you guys. Good to see your faces. So let me get back to the question here. Yeah, the ego is definitely personal, and the shadow to me, excuse me, the shadow to me is it's a little different than the ego, kind of like what Rob was saying. I think that the shadow is more based on the negativity, more honed in on the past as the what is a shadow? Shadow is that which hides in the sunlight or the darkness, beneath the sun or light, that which stops light, however you want to describe that. So that would be inside of us. And I think that is, again, it varies from the ego in the sense that the ego can be both superior and not superior, where the shadow, I believe, is just the less of the two. The sadness, the fear, the grief. I don't see very much positive things arising from the shadow self. Just always, when I look back in at my shadow self, a good example is, when I go without a drum set for 3 or 4 years and I sit on my drum set, I would feel somewhat inferior. I bought a motorcycle. For the first few rides, I got on the bike and I felt superior. However, upon recognizing that feeling, I just kind of, that little play on words that kind of manifests into thought as energy, instead of feeling superior, I decided to just twist it a little bit and feel grateful. Huge difference. And that's just a good way to keep the ego in check. The ego is very sneaky and cunning. I catch myself all the time, whether it be, a high or a low. And the good part is that I'm able to have some awareness about it today a lot sooner than I would have in the past. So it's still definitely a practice. But again, I'm going back to the shadow. That's what I think the difference is to me is, again, it's the shadow is the negative. I didn't really catch the whole thing about wounded child, if I'm saying that properly, but it's worth highlighting that is a really good point there. And I think that would mostly reflect into the shadow self at a later stage in life. Just my 2 cents. I'm sure Kelly's got a nickel for us today. So that's just the difference I see between the two. The ego is both, superior and less than somebody, where the shadow is mostly less than, but it's likes to stay in the shadows. It's very personal to you. It's who you don't want the world to see you as. It's somebody that you don't want to even see yourself as. And I guess you could kind of relate that perhaps to the wounded child. Am I saying that properly? Is that what you guys were saying? The wounded child? But yeah, so them are the things that you want to just kind of like stuff in the closet. And April pretty much hit it right on the head when she was saying, that the talkers, the people pleasers, and Poonam, you hit it right on the head as well by saying, you wear this big smile, but then, at some point you kind of go home and melt in the couch and, there might be a little regret from the past or, something along that nature of a less high vibing frequency, I should say. But it's definitely worth highlighting is that, the question for me is, how do you deal with the shadow? We know how to deal with the ego, through awareness. Is shadow something? And this is just coming to me. So, but I guess my take would be that is it? How do we put this? Would we also want to dissolve the shadow self as we would the egoic self or the egoic mind? I think that would be worth highlighting to nip in the butt, because if it carries the negativity of, that low vibe frequency there, why wouldn't we want to change that? And likely the answer would be is through acceptance. Yeah. I mean, one, the awareness, and two, the acceptance of what is. You know, if this was who you were and this is what happened to you, we got to remember that it's not who we are. We are now. That would be all that matters. So if that's something that's within us and we carry that, you know, my answer would always be, you know, acceptance, forgiveness, surrender. One of the three. Passing the buck now.
Incredible. Both you and Caesar, you and Rob both touched upon forgiveness. So I will quote Carolyn Mace again, and I will describe what she says about forgiveness. And this is really, really important, Patricia, because I've been working with y'all on during group meditation and the Facebook Live Q&A on forgiveness as well, right?
Did you say Carolyn Mice?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Carolyn
love
Mace.
her. Yeah, love her.
Beautiful. Beautiful person. She says, forgiveness is the art of retrieving your spirit and returning it to the present time. Forgiveness is the ultimate and the most powerful act of personal and spiritual alchemy. It completely transforms your cell memory and helps you in rewriting the code that is managing your biology so that the future cell tissue that spins off from that cell no longer has the toxic memory inside of it. Therefore, it no longer has the code producing the illness. That is how important forgiveness is to ourselves. It's not even about forgiveness for our ancestors or whatever. It's just cell biology, right? With that, I'll go to Kelly. Go ahead, Kelly. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Okay, we're talking about shadow.
It's
Okay.
the same conversation that we had. We're continuing the conversation
last
where
week,
she was saying, is it personal or not? So she's still asking that question. Thank you.
The ego is a symptom of your shadow. Your shadow evolves out of your biological and mental emotional stories that you choose to believe in as you are born into an illusion created by your parents and adopt in order to be accepted and loved in this world of illusion. So that's the individual personal aspect of it. There is a greater divine aspect where shadow and light actually work together in order to push you to evolve. Some people don't have it in their soul contract to evolve, so they can't even feel or understand that shadow is a concept. And this is what I learned with my ex-wife. It's a real thing. So shadow is both personal and cosmic in a sense. We have our personal stories that we have adopted and chosen to believe in order to survive, in order to be accepted by ourselves, stories that we tell ourselves in order to accept ourselves and what we feel, and also to be accepted by those around us. And this is the stories that we tell ourselves that also reflect our need to be accepted by the world at large. This is where the ego comes in. Our ego is the primary defense mechanism that our shadow uses in order to keep our sense of reality validated. And there are many, many layers to this. The whole, like, this isn't a tiny little can of worms. This is like a huge, humongous, like, lake of writhing serpents. A little hidden symbolic pun there. So what was I just popped in. What was the original question, or was there a framing sentence or question from the group, from Patricia?
I kind of,
Patricia, yeah,
Connect.
okay.
yeah, you want to say, yeah, go ahead, your understanding.
So I think the confusion, Kelly, was that because when Eckhart speaks, he's a little generic, and she kind of got the idea that you could, and however you can actually do that, Patricia, that you just catch an ego, that you just pick it up, that it's not your own individual shadow or ego. And then Poonam added in the inner child. So we're looking at how do these three interplay? They're so similar, they're so connected, but yet they're separate.
Okay,
Sorry, Patricia.
Actually,
Sorry.
yeah, no, that was perfect, but the only thing is it was wounded, I think, because Poonam had the tip of the day and she was talking about wounded child, that we need the wound then to become a wounded healer, the prototype. So I was curious how ego, shadow created that wounded child or wound, right? That we never healed, but we needed it to become a healer, a wounded healer.
this is one of my favorite topics. So
You're welcome.
I'm trying to sort through. Okay, so the initial wound is being separated from source, period. The underlying foundation of all our wounds that is reflected from our separation from ourself, and why being present with ourself is so important, is based in this initial wound of being separated from source and being squeezed into 3D. The wounded child is a reflection of this. When we are born as children, we have pure hearts. I was around a little one today that couldn't stop staring at me. I'm going, hi, I'm all sparkly. It was just like all eyeballs, like huge, just like the kid. Anyhow, so that reflection of that innocence that we have, that we bring with us into this world, is also part of this mix-up. So the thing about shadow, and this is something that the ego hides, the shadow will fake feelings in our body. It'll fake stories. It will fake and mimic and parallel things that are true with its own slightly out of phase feelings of truth. And this is part of the way that shadow literally pulls the veil of illusion over our eyes, over our senses, over our mind, which is why being so present with ourselves is so important. The wounded child arises from the disconcerting dichotomy of having to deal with people who have chosen to not honor that purity that we are born with when we are children. So the wound that we feel, like the wounded child, that whole energy has multiple layers to it, right? The foundation being separated from source, coming in with purity, and then being bombarded by adults' fears and projections and energy that is either unstable, that is not honoring of that purity, that is not honoring of the space that we're in. And it can be complete strangers that your parents interact with, or family members, or our own parents. So one of the things that our ego likes to do is likes to attach to things so that it has a concrete way to stabilize and feed this sense of woundedness. And the most important thing that we can do for ourselves is realize that, and thank you for Poonam, thank you for bringing up the law of forgiveness, because the law of forgiveness is what allows acceptance and healing for real. And it is absolutely true. The effect on the body when and I'm just getting goosebumps here, like talking about this. The moment we forgive ourselves, the moment we understand that we have to forgive ourselves for choosing to believe in the pain over our own self, over our own heart, over our own divine aspects and strength, the moment we learn how to forgive ourselves for choosing the pain story over ourselves, that's the magic. That's why changing the way we think, understanding the ego and how it hijacks us is so important. Because, and Poonam's right on the money. Carolyn Misses, yeah, big fan of her work too. When we understand how important our thoughts are, so Rob, this is what I was saying when in the group chat, in the group, about why mental, emotional, and physical discipline is so important, why discipline is so important, because mastery over our thoughts, over our stories that our ego likes to run in loops in our heads, to pull us out of alignment, to pull us away from honoring ourselves. And unfortunately, some of us are not actually born with that capacity. Some of us will be completely unconscious and are just here to absorb the information unconsciously. Those of us who are, asking these questions, who are here on this panel, who are reading Eckhart's books, who are reading the Seth material, who are gobbling up this information to understand ourselves, who can ask these questions, and who begin to understand that there are multiple angles, multiple layers to all this stuff, and it's not just so simple as, oh, I'll read a book and I'll fix myself, but there's real work involved. When we understand that the work is about forgiveness and honoring the gift of being here in body to be able to experience the purity of loving ourselves. This is the real magic. When we are able to love ourselves and to forgive ourselves for believing in someone else's story of pain that we adopted as our own, especially our parents and our family, it's like that blood magic, that blood energy is really, really intense sometimes. When we can forgive ourselves for what we have chosen to believe in that has kept us in pain, the patterns, the habits, the things that we just accept as normal, that's when the magic in changing, literally, when we forgive ourselves, we change our body chemistry. When we change our ability to accept, when we accept things, even huge, egregious violations of our energy, when we can forgive ourselves for either placing ourselves in that situation or choosing to initiate things that have then spiraled out of control, it's the act of forgiveness and the act of acceptance that are literally melded at the hip that really demonstrate our discipline and our ability to be present in our hearts, and not just our minds, but our hearts. And when we detach and step into observation and get out of the mental analysis and feel that space of forgiveness, because all of our information, even though we have this magical brain that goes tickety talk, we have this amazing ability to feel. And this is why being present with ourselves is so important, because that is what gives us the ability to understand what it is that we're feeling, why we're feeling it, and where the origin of the story actually comes from. Because being present with ourselves gives us the ability to understand where the origin of the story that is feeding our ego, that is feeding our shadow and keeping our shadow in power. When we discover where the origin of that story comes from, through acceptance and through forgiveness. Okay, I have these feelings. I need to forgive myself for having these feelings. I need to forgive myself for believing in the story, because this story is not mine. This is one of the things that I've gone through with my family and my parents, especially. I am so different than my family, and I tried to fit in for such a long time. I had to spend some time forgiving myself for compromising my energy, my ethics, and my principles just to be accepted. And for that whole family love thing. Lots of factors involved there, but the primary story is one of wanting acceptance. And what does that look like in the external world? Well, we give up to our family an awful lot of our time and energy, and we squeeze ourselves into a box to be accepted and to be loved. Except we have to also look at what do we do and what do we give up in order to do that. And generally that is usually self-love. The way we compromise ourselves for others is something that, comes into play in terms of that initial wound of being separated from source. And that's where the original shadow comes in, that whole play, that embeddedness in our energy field of shadow literally being part of our biology, because it's hardwired into the back of our brain, that reptilian part of our brain, that really, really old part of our brain that impulses us biologically, physically, mentally, emotionally, causes the endocrine system to act in very specific ways to participate in anxiety and fears and all these other emotional spaces physically, so that we physically feel them. We have to understand that this is all part of the process of learning our own language, of being able to be with ourselves and to let ourselves feel what we feel, and to forgive ourselves for anything ugly and nasty that comes up. Because in order to actually look at our shadow, we have to accept that part of us is willing to do absolutely horrendous things to fit in. Horrendous emotional and mental gymnastics to fit in. And this is part of the forgiveness, that my own process that I've been through, where I realized, oh, wow, yeah, that whole 11 years of my life, dang, that was just me trying to fit in, like my marriage and me trying to fit in my family. I knew it. I had my inner voice was screaming at me for 11 years. That's how stubborn I am. That's how I know. That was one of my pivotal learning experiences, is understanding how stubborn my mind is, how stubborn the ego is in terms of holding on to this concept of love that is outside of ourselves, that is not about being present with ourselves, not about accepting ourselves for who we are. Even though, sometimes things are like right in our face and so glaringly obvious, and we know it, but we'll still turn our backs to the truth. And that's part of the law of forgiveness, is accepting how many times we have actually turned our backs on ourselves. And this is what our shadow loves. Our shadow loves pulling the wool over our eyes. Our shadow loves convincing us that all this programming is more real than what we actually feel when we're present with ourselves. And our shadow knows how to manipulate us physically. So this is why understanding things like forgiveness, the laws of the cosmic laws, like law of forgiveness is a cosmic law for a very good reason, because it is real spiritual alchemy, forgiving ourselves for not being present. I mean, absolutely. I mean, yes, we have to go back to the past in order to dig it up. We can't just bury it and hope it just, decomposes, because mental, emotional, spiritual energies don't do that. They stay. They'll stay in our body. If our mind resists, if we build up enough resistance to actually looking at our shadow, to looking at our emotional stories, if we resist and reject our emotional stories and our choices, that will cause disease. That will cause enough tension in the body that will cause an imbalance, where the stress of the tension is then taking up energy physically, that then causes a mineral imbalance in an organ or in the nervous system. The myelin sheath becomes demyelinized because our body's eating up B vitamins because of all the stress. And yet the simple act of forgiveness can literally wipe everything clean, because the act of forgiveness ties in directly with that primal wound, that original wound of being separated from source. We're here in 3D where we're dealing with this crazy world, and we've forgotten that our real world is inside our heart.
How do you know, Kelly, that you're forgiven? Because I thought for many years, I did many different exercises. I really wanted to forgive. I was even burning, like writing stuff on things and burning, imagining all the stuff. And it's still coming up, certain things. Like right now, I was able to listen to April and Poonam and Rob and Caesar. And you started talking, and then all of a sudden I'm feeling like inside something is shaking. I don't know. I was like, almost like my ego is like, okay, I know those things. They're nice. Blah, blah. And then you brought that boom, Cavalier. And so I don't know what's going on right now, but
that's your shadow resisting the information that I'm sharing with you. Because when I speak, when I actually talk and interact with people, it's not just verbal. I've witnessed this in my classes for almost 30 years, where people's egos get shaken literally, and they'll either stay because they want to understand and heal, or they will leave and they'll never come back because their egos have felt the truth.
So when you said that to find out the origin of the story, this is when it got me, because I thought, okay, no, I'm good. I'm moving on. And when you said that again, it's like, oh my gosh.
Well, yeah, I've been reconnecting with certain aspects, some of my skills. I used to do open mics, and what you're describing is actually something that several people at some of the open mics where I would read my poetry actually described to me, where they would shake inside, but they couldn't remember anything that I said. All they could remember was the feeling of almost anxiety, anticipation. Some actually said dread combined with absolute elation. And could I please explain what the F was going on?
Yeah, kind of, please.
So I've been doing some healing work, and April has been absolutely wonderful in supporting this process. And I've removed some really deeply wounding energetic blocks that I kind of suspected were there, but I have now confirmed, because remove them. I'm like, oh my God, night and freaking day. So this means that I'm pulling in a lot more energy. And even some of the work that I've done on Kelly, she's been like, okay, like I'll just, we'll hold hands. She's like, okay, that's too much. That's too much. I'm just like, we're just walking down the street. We're just holding hands. Like, what? She's like, no, that's like way too much
You're
energy.
gonna become a fireball soon.
Well, I mean, I kind of like the whole 3D thing, but the way we integrate 5D into our reality is by physically embodying it. And this is where the law of forgiveness comes in. This is where changing our cellular biology comes in. So we all have minds. We all have an ability to feel through our body. And so this is a great point of reference for you, Patricia, to understand that divine light, energies of a spiritual nature, doesn't matter where a person is in the world. They do not follow the linear 3D limitations of time and space. So what you are feeling is something that I've had many people describe to me, especially when I used to do open mics. I actually, just a little story on myself. I would shock and stun people into silence and I would have to intersperse my Zen poetry that I would write with little jokes about cookies and cats and stuff like that to get people out of.
Thank you. Yeah, that helps.
So I've gotten very, very good at being silly and joking and being light.
But I feel that having underneath it the not heavy bad, but just really a lot.
It is really important. Yeah, and it is a lot. So I just speaking with people, I will share an awful lot of energetic information. It's also one of the reasons why I've been very careful and very quiet and not outspoken about a lot of things, because most people, well, anyhow, just things that I'm relearning and remembering.
So his energy has shifted. His energy is shifted. And when your energy shifts, it comes through your energy that you're speaking.
Yep.
And for whatever reason, it's super resonating with you. But Kelly he's got some amazing power back there. So his energy shifted, and that's coming through the throat chakra, the void. And it travels. There's no limit. Yeah.
But how come his energy and your energy, April, worked on me similar? Like when we had our conversation on the phone too, it was so powerful. I just felt it. So, I mean, and yours was so soft, and Kelly's so, like a bare.
You know what?
energy.
I think Kelly probably knows more about my energy than I do. Honestly, maybe that's my shadow. It's a resonance. It's an alignment with source. It's a connection. It is what we're talking about with the 5D. So when I'm speaking, I am connected and I am projecting that energy, that love, and you are picking up your soul, your body is picking up on it. But like I said, Kelly can probably describe it better than me.
Well, that's a really good description. It is about alignment. That feeling that you're feeling is your body. You're literally the molecular bonds in your cells, mitochondria. Again, going back to the law of forgiveness, the act of forgiveness. It is understanding that original wound, and this is something that I don't hear many people talking about, or whether or not people actually understand this. That separation from source is actually the original wound. So you're feeling this in your body, Patricia. This is why you have that feeling of the anticipation, the anxiety, but it isn't really anxiety, but there's, oh, wow, there's something here, right? There's something real here, right? That original wound, that separation from source, when we're brought into the 3D, is kind of a shock and disconcerting. And this is why babies are always like, what? What the heck's going on? It's like, oh, we're doing this 3D thing again. Son of a,
Oh, that's funny.
yeah. Again, like I was around a baby today, and that was like literally, I swear I was getting this telepathic going, wait, what? The kid wouldn't stop looking at me. It was cute. I haven't had that in a while, so that's a clear indication of my energy has changed an awful lot.
But with the forgiveness, if you could just go back to that, how to know that.
Before Kelly starts, 1 second, Kelly. I know Rob may drop. I wanted to let Rob know something that came up for me, Rob, is you mentioning that you did not find anything about the fear. What I would say is you should find a good past life regression therapist and see if it is past life related. Because there's no way that you are feeling fear and it has no reason for being there. Yeah, maybe in this lifetime you don't see the fear. You're shining the torch. You're thinking it's getting assimilated. But just because to me, if the experience is there, it's stored somewhere in memory. It's either of this lifetime or it's of some other lifetime, but it is there. Why am I experiencing? Then I wouldn't experience if it's not meant to be there, if it had nothing to do with me. Even with your daughter, ask her to look at it because it doesn't dissolve. If she experiences it over and over again, the universe is coming up and slapping us and saying, watch it, and that's going to transfer into something more. If you don't watch it, then it's going to, like I said, right? It's like beach ball. We are not looking at it. We are not looking at a past life regression for this. And then that beach ball will hit us on the face. So something to think about is a past life therapist or past life regression, or read your Akashic record. Same thing for Patricia. If y'all want a couple of people that read Akashic records, personal Akashic records, then y'all can look them up and see if they let you know that what is it that's that. With that, I'll go back to Kelly. You wanted to say something, Ron?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I just want to jump in for a second. You make a good point, and I'm always willing to check out things that I don't know about, and that's one. I will say, though, that I do have one specific example. I feel like insomnia. I had 35 years of insomnia, chronic severe anxiety, and those things, when I paid attention to them, and I'll try to be specific and quick. I know we're running a little late. at night, I would be frustrated and I would be overwhelmed. And eventually I realized that I needed to sit with my inner child, my wounded child that was all fearful and afraid and upset and looking at the watch saying, I'm only going to get 1 hour of sleep again and life sucks. And you know, how many more beers do I have to drink to make myself go to sleep and blah, blah, blah. I decided to stop all of the ego victim behavior. And I looked at myself separately and I stayed awake with myself. My body did not want to go to sleep. It was still in those patterns. And over the course of 2 weeks, it diminished. I started to sleep more. The chronic severe anxiety and insomnia, by the way, are both 99.9% gone. Sometimes I'll have some rises in the body, but those things don't affect me. I'm not saying that they are not in there, and maybe I do need to speak to somebody. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to do that. I love to learn more about myself, but I do feel like because I kind of woke up and looked at those energy fields that were consuming me, that I was intertwined with, and I separated myself from them. And I said, this body is more important to me than anything. And I sat up at 2 o'clock in the morning and said, yes, I know, but I'm going to be okay with this. And eventually it went away, and it has not affected me in quite a while.
Nice.
But still, because you're saying it does, like there's a 0.001, I'm trying to erase the 0.001% because it'll balloon back. The 0.001% will become 5%, 10%. When our presence drops, it'll become 20%, and suddenly it's taken over our life, right? One of the things that I would say is, so April had to drop, I think. Do B12, ashwagandha, lemon balm, and licorice. Those 4, I'll give it to you in Messenger. Those are supplements that you can take to so B12 helps with balancing your phrenic nerve and your vagus nerve, which is causing the anxiety, maybe causing the imbalance in it, maybe causing the anxiety. It just may be physical. And the others also, they are adaptogens. They help with balancing your nervous system. And then anxiety is also due to a lot of heavy metals in our body. Patricia has been doing the heavy metal detox smoothie. We watch, we follow the medical medium protocol. So we're doing the physical, she's doing the physical part of it a lot, right? She's a whole year of doing the medical medium protocol. So you can cleanse the heavy metals as well. See if that helps on the physical side, it helps as well. I'll give you that information and then I'll go to Kelly. Thank you, Ram. I know you dropped, so I wanted to make sure that you don't drop without that information. Go ahead, Kelly. Sorry about interrupting you. Thank you. Grateful. Thank you.
All good. All good. Where was I, Patricia?
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness. How does she know if she has really forgiven? Because she seems to have come around, especially with her father, that she has done all these forgiveness practices and still not forgiven. Or feeds that she has still not forgiven.
I don't know if it's the shadow that came up. Even it was during one of our Q&As, right? All of a sudden, I started to be very defensive, and
yeah, that's always an indication that your shadow's still trying to control the narrative. How do you know when you've forgiven somebody or something or yourself? I've always gone by this feeling. When I know for myself, when I've actually truly forgiven myself in a situation and I've gone through that process, I cry straight up. I feel the release.
Did you do something to forgive, or just happened through grace?
I usually do invocations and decrees, and it's kind of like a meditation where I'll spend 10-20 minutes basically repeating to myself, either out loud or in my mind's eye, that I forgive myself for this choice. I am forgiving myself for this choice. I have forgiven myself for this choice. And often I need to repeat myself to myself long enough to sort of get to a point, because there'll be resistance. So what you're talking about in terms of feeling that defensiveness come up, that's when you know your shadow's trying to push back against you actually changing the way you're thinking. So that's a really good point of reference that you have given yourself in terms of feeling that resistance. And when you feel resistance, when you feel any kind of resistance to looking at something, that's usually an indication that your shadow is trying to hide information from you. And this is one of the important things to understand, is that that separation, that initial wound of being separated from source, is also full of information. And our shadow likes to convince us, uses our ego to tell us a story that the shadow is bad. The shadow is just information. It is a reflection of that original wound of separation from source. So we have all these stories to explain all these feelings that we feel inside from that initial wound of separation. And the wounded child is one of them. The wounded healer is one of them. We do not have to be wounded. We do not have to be wounded at all. There's no reason to be wounded. There is no reason, no logical reason why we have to carry around wounds at all. We forgive ourselves. When we forgive ourselves, we can heal and close and literally erase any wounded part of ourselves. And one of the things that we have to understand is that it's okay. It's absolutely okay to have held on to that wound because we didn't know any better. Until you actually see it and understand it and begin the process of real forgiveness, of working through that. And I really appreciate what David brought up, is how people give us an opportunity to give us experiences. And this is how the external world is a mirror, is that everybody around us, especially family, family gives us tons and tons of opportunity to reflect inward, to feel things. Because as we grow up, we will separate, we will grow apart from our family, we will grow apart from our parents. When we become ourselves as adults, ideally we have something. Yes, Caesar, exactly that. We actually have to forgive ourselves for not forgiving ourselves in the process as well. Absolutely on point. That's part of the process too. When you don't know that you're holding on to something, and then you discover it, it's like, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. But when you build the habit of self-forgiveness, of being present with yourself and practicing that as your main ritual, of like your main ritual becoming forgiveness, is like, oh, I need to be mindful of this, or I need to be, it's like, no, forgive yourself, practice forgiveness with every single breath possible for as long as possible. When you feel that defensiveness come up, forgive yourself for being defensive. Forgive yourself for having those thoughts. Tell yourself you're okay. That's the thing. You are okay. You're here. You're okay. You're alive. You're okay. Like there are so many little things that our ego likes to prey upon, that our shadow pushes our ego to trigger us with. And this is why the shadow stays hidden so often, is that it's using the ego as its front man, front person, whatever. But yes, absolutely, forgiving ourselves for not knowing is absolutely a big part of the journey. And that's something that when I started unpacking and deconstructing things over the years, that became one of my primary things, is forgiving myself for not knowing, for not seeing it in the first place. Because there's no reason to carry that wound either. When we don't know, we don't know. When we do know, it's just like, oh, thank you for, like, what I would do is like, thank you for showing me this piece that I did not see before. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to heal this information, to integrate this information. Thank you for giving me this information so that I can heal. Literally exactly what I would say to myself. Thank you for giving me this information so that I can heal. And not judging it and rejecting it because, oh, this is bad, or this is, my shadow, or this is my ego triggering me, or blah, blah, blah. It's like, no. Thank you for showing me this information. because that is one of the big things that your ego and your shadow do not want you to understand, is that they are actually giving you information to integrate. And this is what David was exactly what David was bringing up. People around us give us these opportunities to learn. They reflect back at us. People respond to our energy.
I have one more question.
No, Patricia, actually, I want to go to Caesar
Okay,
so that we can
okay.
wrap up. It's 8:30 almost, and it's 9:30 for you, so it's getting late, right? So hold on to that question for next week. How about that? Okay.
Or Patricia, you could send me a message on Facebook Messenger.
All right. Okay, I asked too, because you might not be here next week, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You absolutely do that if you want. Yeah.
Thank you.
Incredible, Kelly. Thank you so much for your insights. Grateful for it. The answer I would give Patricia is the way you know that you're forgiven is when you recall the event, whatever you in the past would agitate you, the way it agitated you on that day, you no longer get agitated. The emotional, I keep saying, right? The emotional charge is not there. You're
Yes.
very peaceful. The other thing is I never go in my past other than giving you all examples. I don't remember those incidents day to day when I'm doing work and everything. I'm in the future, or I'm planning for what workshop we are doing, or what I'm doing for y'all for group meditation, or what I need to do for work. But I never think of the past ever. Nothing about my past needs to be visited because I've visited each point and forgiven. Right? I don't need to visit it again. The past has no power of the present over the present moment. It has no power. My job is to be as present with what I'm doing in this moment, whether it is planning for whatever is going on in the future or what I need to be doing right at this moment. But other than that, I have no use for the past. It has served me. I know all the lessons. It has taught me all my lessons. I know exactly what my lessons are. Once you know your lessons, then it's just growth. Now it's time to grow more. How can I improve my meditation experience that I get more mystical experiences? How can I change my other experiences that are more mystical? Everything is about like now transformation, like accelerating that transformation, right? That's why I signed up for this course with Carolyn Mace. I don't know why, but the part about healing and knowing intuitively what needs to be healed in my body, I want to learn it, right? Next time anything happens, what really caused it. So I want to learn that intuitive power for myself. If I'm able to help somebody else, that's okay. But I want to learn it for myself. But that's easier. If you want to talk about forgiveness, what Patricia talked about. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say a big, huge thank you to Kelly, man, because I just learned a whole bunch on that whole. You've expanded the knowledge within this small little brain of mine, because I had nothing on the shadow self and the comparison with the ego, but now it all makes great sense. I never really looked into it like that. I just want to say something to Patricia, as far as what you just commented on, Poonam, regarding the lack of need for the past. I think in Patricia's case, and since we're on the subject, everything just kind of commingles here for a reason. So when the past does come up, that little thought of the past that irritates you, you have to use that moment for the opportunity to put that to bed once and for all. So the next time you get reminded of whatever it is that was so causing you this suffering, it will not affect you. And this is the transformation that Poonam just mentioned about when you know you have truly forgiven or accepted something. It no longer affects you in a negative light. As I made a comment several times in the past about losing, my father per se, and there was nowhere in town that I could drive by without seeing a job that we did, and I would get sad. And then one day, I just literally pulled over on the side of the road and I sat with it. And I said, okay, I'm going to take this pain and I'm going to transform the pain. And it was the opportunity to bring that moment, to bring that past situation that I have not yet forgiven or accepted or surrendered to. Same thing. I have not fully accepted it as if I had chosen that. So when these dark moments come up, it is the opportunity for you to accept or forgive right then and there. And that's the end of that one. Next time something else comes up, that is the opportunity. That moment is the opportunity to either forgive, surrender, or accept the isness of whatever it is. Forgive yourself, others, whatever. But that is the opportunity. And that takes a little time to do, because as they come up, you're just dissolving them into the light of the consciousness. Maybe that's it. And then sooner or later, there is no need for the past at all. At all. There were so many things in my past that were causing me pain. And every time they come up, I would accept them as if I chose them, or forgive myself or forgive others, whatever the situation called for. I did it then. And I can just tell you, it was like a domino effect. So when you have that unease, it's very important to take advantage of that moment, because it is the opportunity for you to forgive or accept. And then if you properly, fully accept or forgive yourself or forgive whoever, whatever, if you fully and truly do that, then it's done. It can never have that negative effect on you again. And at some point, sooner than later, the past can never haunt you again. It seemed like another lifetime ago, because I heard you say too many times, what am I supposed to do? Just forget about it? No.
Yes,
Forgive and accept.
kind of.
Yeah. But I'm just really grateful to be here and then catch this evening. I'm like, ooh, man.
It was powerful today. I felt it. I felt that each one of you brought, oh my God, so much. And
Caesar always comes towards the end, guns a blazing, right? I love that you have to. So after group meditation, when you were having that emotional reaction on Friday, instead of going to how much ever you were tired, right? What I would say is put on your meditation music and work through the emotions that you were experiencing in that moment. Exactly what Caesar is saying, right? It's not time to go to bed, because then there's no time to dissolve it. Yeah, you're tired, but that's the moment, because it's exploding.
And
to work
dreams won't help, because
No.
I'm kind of surrendering to the unknown in the dream. Now they
You want your awareness
They're
in,
like a pulse.
so what you're doing is you're bringing up in your meditation, you're trying to increase your presence power or increase your awareness so that you can shine a light on what is the hurt, right? Kind of like what Eckhart says, right? It is the light of consciousness that will dissolve whatever the pain is. Pain and the pain body dissolves in the light of consciousness. So if you're not conscious, you're unconscious, it's not going to dissolve. You'll feel it again in a few days. Again, when that topic is brought up, you'll react in the same way. Exactly what Caesar is saying. So, Kelly, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, one thing to understand, when we're actually processing out old stories or old ego attachments, we will feel tired. And there's a few reasons for this. Because we are tired from having held on to it for such a long time, but also the feeling of that dense energy actually coming up to the surface and out. It's heavy. It's literally heavy, and it mimics and parallels the feeling of fatigue in the body. So we'll feel tired, but we're actually processing, and our system is energetically purging the old dense energy.
That is so true, man. Ooh.
So
You'll
let's
sleep well when you know.
just rest, relax, and sit with it, like you, Caesar, right? Just sit with it.
That
And
process
Sit
is
with
so
it.
good, though.
Sit with it when but you have to increase your vibrational energy. Like I used to put on the Sacred Acoustics meditation and increase my vibrational, like get into more the awareness. So normally when you're not disturbed, learn how to increase your awareness, increase your presence power, so that then now when this trouble comes, then you can sit with it and increase your presence power, and you'll dissolve it, and you'll feel it. Like I remember in 2018 was the last time I had any kind of like strong emotion within me.
Right on.
Never have I had it after 2018. And I saw a release. I started laughing. Like I sat with it for an hour and a half, like sat with it. It was like 10:30 at night. It was almost going to be 11. But suddenly I started burst out laughing, and I knew it left. The energy left. So that's this thing. And it's getting late. It's time for your bedtime, Patricia and
Thank you
Caesar.
so
It's
much
late too.
for you guys. Thank
Yep.
you.
Y'all have been incredibly amazing. Thank you so much. David and Sri Lakshmi have been online. Christina has been with us as well. Many blessings. Much love. Thank you. Thank you
I
for
see you,
choosing
Kelly.
your divinity over your humanity and being here. So grateful. Have a fantastic week. Thank you. Bye.
Love you guys.
Bye, Sri Lakshmi.
you.
Love you,
Bye.
Caesar.
Thank
Bye.
you.